What is up, everybody? Wow, was that a night of fights, and wow, the main event was absolutely crazy. Let's get right into this. Henry Cejudo knocks out TJ Dillashaw, wins by TKO, 32 seconds inside the first round. Now, what happened here? Cejudo knocking out TJ that early, did anybody predict that to happen? Well, the first thing to note is Henry Cejudo, of course, took that same karate stance he has been taking since his loss to Joseph Benavidez, I believe, right? And he did something that Conor McGregor always does, or at least he always used to do, especially at 145, and it was more noticeable in his fight with Dennis Seaver, as well as somewhat against Chad Mendes, and that is, he would throw up the high kick, in his karate stance, of course, throw up the high kick to make his opponent move the direction he wants him to move, and it's usually away from the power hand, because he usually throws the power kick as a high kick, so they're moving away from the power hand, and that allows Conor McGregor, and in this case, Henry Cejudo, to march them down and measure for the right hand after a couple steps forward because of their wide stance. They're able to get really close with just a few steps. He's lining them up for the power hand. And that right hand, you can measure with the left and just pop it right out there. And he caught TJ right behind the ear. And it's crazy to think that TJ, of all people, with the footwork he has, his ability to switch stances, all that sort of stuff, he got caught in this same thing. And I would never have thought that TJ would have gotten caught in that kind of movement, in that kind of placement. Of course, he got pushed down, and how easily he got pushed away from Cejudo was crazy. Might mean that the strength that TJ lost for this fight, the cut that he had to take, probably did something to his strength, probably did something to his ability to take a punch. We'll never know. Maybe if they fight at 135, which probably should be the next fight, we'll see how that goes if Cejudo's able to land the same punches. But then again, Cejudo's going to gain weight and be more powerful. So that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And then he followed up with some shots, and it got stopped. Now, the stoppage, I believe, is just a little bit too early. I understand he got dropped like 2-3 times. I do think it's a little bit too early. You have to give that magnitude of a fight a chance to rebound and have something crazy happen out there. I know TJ was hurt, but he didn't look completely out of it. He didn't look hurt to the point where he cannot continue anymore. He was working for the single leg, but seeing him drop that last time, that was pretty bad. He ate a couple punches on the way down, and his head was rattling all over the place as he was getting hit. I can understand the stoppage. I can understand why people would be upset about it. I would like for it to be a little bit longer, but you cannot take that kind of performance away from Henry Cejudo. He came out there and TJ had no moments. He threw a leg kick, got checked, I think. It didn't really land too clean. And Cejudo seemed to be very quick out there, especially with his way to get in, even initially in the fight. Like right when the fight started, him coming in on TJ, I think he threw a right kick and then a right hand behind it and caught TJ with both of them. He has some speed there, man. And this probably tells you cutting weight into a super fight is probably harder to do because you are compromising a lot of what you have at the higher weight class. So you have to change so much of your game to compete at a lower weight class being compromised, right? That could be a lesson here. It could be a lesson that actually going down is harder. It might be more glorifying, I guess you would say, right? Because when a guy like Henry Cejudo who's able to drop the 135-pound champion, TJ is usually a lot bigger than Henry Cejudo is, and he looked way bigger than Cejudo in there. But then again, just looking at them doesn't tell you the whole story, because Henry Cejudo looked way bigger than Demetrius Johnson, but Johnson weighed more than Cejudo, so I'm really curious to see who was actually the bigger fighter in there, who actually weighed more in there. But Cejudo going up to 135, he's going to pack on a lot more muscle, a lot more weight, more power behind his punches, more weight behind his punches. It's going to be interesting to see, but TJ's chin is probably going to be a lot better there. The wrestling, it really didn't work out too much. I'm almost speechless about that fight. It was so quick. People say the 125ers can't hit. He's able to drop the 135-pound champion with one of his first punches. And those shots behind the ear, man, you drop so fast and you're trying to get your balance back. It's hard to do so. And this is going to be another thing. Maybe it isn't TJ's chin. Maybe it's just him getting hit behind the ear and he can't recover from it that well. And he got hit by big shots after that. So it might be that as well. It might not be TJ's cut compromise his chin. I think even at 135, if Cejudo lands that punch, that same punch, it might still drop TJ. But TJ, he tried to duck under the right hand as he saw Cejudo come in, but Cejudo's punch is very quick. Caught him right before he was able to get completely under the punch. Who these guys should be fighting next? It should be a rematch, 100%. Cejudo should go up to 135, and you gotta commend Henry Cejudo. He just beat Demetrius Johnson, who was a pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, and now he just beat TJ Dillashaw, who many were thinking, skill-wise, was the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And he beat them back-to-back. I mean, if Cejudo was not a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter at this point, I don't know who is. And I hope from this performance they keep the 125-pound division. I really hope so. And then we'll go to the co-main event. Greg Hardy loses to Ellen Crowder by disqualification in the second round, 2 minutes and 28 seconds. What do you say about this fight? I mean, it was a little bit sloppy, not the most technical fight, of course. I think Greg Hardy was winning the fight, though. I thought he had the first round. I thought he was winning the second round, although it was only halfway over. He was winning up to that point, because Crowder wasn't really getting Hardy with anything. He wasn't landing strikes a whole lot at all. And even on the ground, he didn't really do much besides just control him. And in the first round, when he took Hardy to the ground, there was a point where Hardy's legs were so wide open, it was almost like he was doing the splits. And I was just wondering, why isn't Crowder passing? I mean, it's so open. And Hardy isn't like a Damian Maia character who would probably bait you to do it and then reverse the position on you. So, I don't know, there were some questionable things from both of them. But Crowder didn't really have any real moments. He had a guillotine that was getting kind of close, but it slipped off. Hardy just seemed to be a lot better defensively than Crowder was offensively, even with the technique that Hardy had. And he's so quick. That's the thing that you have to take note about Hardy that I said before. Hardy, he's probably not that technical, but he's so fast. He's able to get away with the lack of technique. He's able to just get away from his opponent's punches. Just moving. He doesn't have to bring his hands up anywhere. Just moves away, and he's just that quick. And you saw that in this fight. Crowder had a hard time landing anything. But Crowder did take the shots. He took a couple right straights. He was leaning away from almost all of them, though. So they weren't landing too clean, as people probably thought they were. Crowder was really good defensively, not getting hit clean. But he did get hit clean by the knee, the illegal knee. Crowder started trash-talking Hardy. And I don't know what he was saying out there, but he said, hit me and stuff like this. And I think that might have gotten Hardy completely out of his mindset to the point where he wasn't even thinking about what would be a disqualification. He just wanted to hurt this guy at this point, and he threw the knee. And combined that with the lack of experience, it's logical to think that this kind of outcome isn't that surprising, to be honest. Lack of experience, as well as getting riled up badly from his opponent. Lack of experience is also going to allow the opponent to rile him up a lot more. So on top of everything, it's going to be a little bit harder for him to be composed under the trash talking and stuff like that compared to someone like Dan Henderson or something, where they've seen it, they've done it, they know what they're doing. Trash talking just doesn't work. But it could have been intentional. I don't know. It doesn't make sense for it to be intentional because I thought, and I believe he probably thought he won the first round. He was doing pretty well in the second round, right? It wasn't like he was losing the fight or he needed a way out of there. He was gassing out a little bit, but even coming to the second round, being gassed, he's still so explosive. He still had his ways with Crowder. The only thing is, going into the third round possibly, I don't know how Hardy would have felt out there. I don't think it was intentional. We don't know, of course. I just think it was lack of experience as well as Crowder riling him up. But 100% Greg Hardy, I think he's still going to fight in the UFC. I mean, he did well against a guy like Crowder, who also, let's be honest, he did lose his first fight. And in this fight, he didn't look exceptional or anything. And to be honest, I was kind of impressed with Greg Hardy. I mean, someone as new as he is in martial arts, let alone MMA, to be able to pick up some of the stuff he has picked up, as well as being as composed as he was in the grappling exchanges, more notably, which is a place he's never really been in an MMA fight, let alone a UFC fight under the bright lights. Pretty impressed. So, who these guys should be fighting next? Maybe a rematch? Why not? I think the rematch will actually be the smartest choice business-wise because some people don't like Greg Hardy, and in his first fight in the UFC, there's controversy, and this controversy has to do with a specific opponent, right? So why not just keep building on that? Okay, Crowder doesn't really have a name, but fighting Greg Hardy and now this happens, people are curious to see what happened, and they're curious to see who is he fighting and all this stuff. Who did this happen to? So let's build up a rematch. There's already something to build off of it, right? And maybe you could bring in more of the casual fans that are already interested in the fight. And then we go to Gregor Gillespie beats Yancy Medeiros by TKO 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the second round. I mean, what do you say here? Gregor Gillespie just put on his wrestling singlet. He just went to town on Medeiros with what he does best, and he didn't need anything else. Some people thought it was boring. I actually kind of liked it. I mean, I like watching wrestling a lot in fights. He was doing a lot out there. He was riding Medeiros the entire fight. He had 8 minutes of control in a 10-minute fight, which is crazy. Grabbing single legs, grabbing body locks, just riding it out. He was using a lot of explosive energy to get Medeiros to the ground, but that's his world. That's what he always does. He did the same thing in his amateur wrestling days. So it's not something new to him to try to take down his opponent with that kind of aggression. But Medeiros did nothing really. I mean, he tried to reach for the legs under. He did try to scramble here and there, but for the most part, he just let Gillespie do what he does. And that is not something he wanted to do. Imagine that's Khabib or something, right? Are you just going to allow Khabib to do that to you? No, because it's going to get really bad out there. And with Gillespie, he wasn't really risking anything until he got into full mount, and then he got Medeiros' back and landed some heavy ground and pound. I mean, he flattened Medeiros. I think Gillespie could have done a little bit more to finish the fight, earlier at least. There was a point in the fight where he actually did take full mount, and then he got out of it himself. He purposely got out and got into side control. I don't know why he did that. And then Medeiros got right into half guard. So I think he was just trying to be a little bit too controlling out there, just not do anything too risky and just win the fight. Just do what he can with the least risk. I think the stoppage was a little bit early. I understand Medeiros was stuck and he wasn't really defending the shots that well. Again, I like to see these fights go a little bit longer out there. I know stopping the fight early is better than stopping it late. But guys like Yancy Medeiros, guys like TJ Dillashaw, we know a lot about how they fight and how they're able to take shots and all that stuff. And someone like Yancy Medeiros, I think you should be given a little bit more time to let him fight things through. But it's a good win for Gregor Gillespie. I don't think that fight was going to go any different. I think he was going to dominate the fight completely. A crazy stat is Yancy only landed one strike on Gregor Gillespie in the entire fight. In 10 minutes, he landed one strike. That has to be like some kind of record, right? So who these guys should be fighting next? Gregor Gillespie 100% needs a top 10 opponent. He just showed in this fight with Yancy Medeiros, who is a very good fighter. He showed that he's just way above that level. His wrestling alone is enough to stop these guys. And he's ranked number 15. James Vick for someone inside the top 10 would be good for him, of course. It's a very good stylistic matchup for Gregor Gillespie. People have been pointing out Kevin Lee. I would not be opposed to that. I mean, stylistically, that should be a very good fight. Very close fight, competitive. And if Gillespie is really up to par and he wants a quick rise in the rankings against the number 5, Kevin Lee, I mean, he's jumping up 10 spaces. I would love that fight. Stylistically, that's 100% the fight I would want to make. That is the fight I want to see next for Gillespie. So let's do it. Gregor Gillespie versus Kevin Lee. That's one I would love to see. And for Yancy Medeiros, man, that is not a good loss to have. Getting completely dominated like that. I'd like to see him fight Beneil Dariush. That'd be a good fight for him. Mark J. Casey would be a good fight. That would be back and forth, I think. Dan Hooker versus Yancy Medeiros would be fun. If I was in charge, I'd probably make that fight. I know Dan Hooker's up in the rankings. He's above Gillespie, but stylistically, I would love to see that fight. They're so similar in the way they fight, and they're just absolute warriors, but I don't think they'll give Yancy that kind of fight. Maybe someone like John McDessie, someone like that. So any of those, but I want to see Dan Hooker. And then I missed the Joseph Benavidez fight with Dustin Ortiz because ESPN Plus messed up on me. I lost the connection for pretty much the entire fight, which was unfortunate and annoying. I thought that was going to happen for the main event. I would have lost it. Joseph Benavidez seemed to have won the fight. I heard he dropped Ortiz and stuff like that, so I have to go back and watch it. Then we go to Paige VanZant versus Rachel Ostovich, where Paige VanZant wins by submission in the second round, 1 minute and 50 seconds. Now, this fight, it seemed to go Ostovich's way. She seemed to be the stronger fighter. She seemed to be the better grappler in there for the most part. I mean, she almost had an armbar. She was getting the better in the scrambles. And even on the feet, she landed that one right overhand. Now, it didn't land clean. It just like skid, just nicked Paige VanZant, and then she was able to take her to the ground. If I remember correctly, it was a body lock with an outside trip. And she was trying to go for a guillotine while being a half guard and stuff. And it looked like Paige was losing her breath in there. She seemed to be the better grappler in the first round. But she did what she always does in fights, where she's doing pretty well. She risks way too much, to the point where it's a fight-ending risk, right? Where she's going to get you or you're going to get her. And I didn't think she needed to hop on the back. She had her arms around Paige's neck, I think, to get a rear naked choke. And then she tried to hop right on top of Paige. She slipped off and got too high and fell. And then Paige was able to get Ostovich's back right away as Ostovich was trying to scramble up to her feet and nearly got the rear naked choke. And then when she got really high on Ostovich, she went for the armbar as Ostovich was reaching forward a little bit too much. The extension of that armbar was nasty. So, learning experience for Ostovich. I mean, she seems to be doing pretty well in her fights, but just makes these big, risky moves that she shouldn't be taking. Learning experience for her. Paige VanZant has been in the game a little bit longer, and it's a great win for VanZant. Her first win in the 125-pound division. 100% they're still going to be fighting the UFC. Marketing and all that stuff is important, and they both have a following. I think VanZant should get a top 15 fighter. Now, she beat Ostovich. I don't know if Montana De La Rosa is fighting anybody because she beat Ostovich as well in her last fight. Them two facing would be good. Andrea Lee would be fun with VanZant. That would be a very good stylistic matchup. Very aggressive and pressuring grapplers for the most part. If I had my way, I would go with Andrea Lee. And for Ostovich, really anybody at this point. She's 1 and 2 in the UFC. Maybe Shanna Dodson or something. Anybody at this point. And then we go to Glover Teixeira versus Carl Robertson, where Glover wins by submission 3 minutes and 21 seconds in the first round. This fight was back and forth in a very short amount of time. We went from Glover Teixeira nearly getting knocked unconscious from elbows to him in full mount on top of Robertson, getting an arm triangle, and this is all happening within like a minute and a half. Absolute insanity. I mean, Glover seemed pretty slow on his feet, and then he shot it for a takedown as Robertson got close to the cage. And then Robertson started landing those Travis Brown elbows and looked like he was going to finish the fight just off of those. Glover was able to stay in there. He's a tough guy. I know his chin is withered away, but his toughness, his heart is still there. Able to weather the storm, and then eventually, I think, use the underhook, or he immediately grabbed on the single leg and drove Robertson over right into the cage again. Went for the double leg, and Glover was like, I cannot get in that position anymore. Forget that noise. Forget patience and working for the takedown. I need to take this guy to the ground. So he just tried to overpower Robertson, which he eventually does. Gets him back to the ground, and he got directly into full mount. He didn't pass anything. Just right into full mount. Robertson allowed it to happen, and Robertson was able to get out of it, get into full guard, and Teixeira worked his way back into the arm triangle again, and just got it easily on Robertson. So great win for Glover Teixeira, showed experience matters. And who these guys should be fighting next? They tested Teixeira with a young fighter outside of top 15, so the stepping stone tactic didn't work here. I think him versus Shogun is probably the fight to make. I mean, that fight is long overdue, of course, Teixeira with his problems with the visa before, but I think that should be the next fight. It makes a lot of sense. And for Carl Robertson, no, he's 2-2 in the UFC. Personally, I'd love to see him fight someone like Sam Alvey. That would be really fun. Someone who would stand with him a little bit more. Sam Alvey would probably make the most sense, so that's the fight I would make next. And then we go to Alexander Hernandez versus Donald Cerrone, where Cerrone wins by TKO in the second round, 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Experience, man. I thought Cerrone was probably going to get rattled by the trash talking of Hernandez after seeing the press conference. Cerrone looked pretty mad, pretty mean out there. Looked like The Undertaker. And he was serious. He was dead serious and focused. Hernandez came out there like I thought he would. He was coming out very pressuring, trying to push the pace early. But his setups, like I said in my prediction video, his setups are not there. It's going to be hard to land on Cerrone at that kind of distance without setting things up really well. Right, he was trying to just throw the overhand, usually off of just switching. And that's not going to work. Cerrone did a really good job of staying away. And whenever Hernandez did come in close, Cerrone found the knee. It was landing to the head, landing to the body. It cut up Hernandez, I believe. And then as Hernandez was trying to get away, Cerrone was finding that right straight long on Hernandez and landing that as well. He even got a takedown on Hernandez, which was impressive. Cerrone really showed out there why he belongs in like the top 7, top 5. I mean, he left the lightweight division at number 2, and he just had to fight someone like Hernandez, who's a little bit low in the rankings in the top 15. And he showed he does not belong there. And then the second round came, and Hernandez was moving a lot into the power kick, or let's say the power side of Cerrone, and that led to the high kick. I saw it so many times happen where Hernandez was moving that direction and putting one hand up as he was doing it. And I'm like, why isn't Cerrone throwing head kicks here? Because he can intercept them every single time when he pressured him with the right hand, with that right straight. And then he finally did throw it, and it connected, and Hernandez did block it with one hand. That is not nearly enough to block a Cerrone head kick. And that closed the show on Hernandez. I mean, a lot of people were happy for that win. A lot of people thought Hernandez disrespected Cerrone, and that's a great win for Cerrone, man. I mean, it showed in the Mike Perry fight, but it showed in this fight again. You can't just throw these inexperienced fighters against the most experienced fighter in the UFC. That is not a great thing to do. And even with skills, Cerrone doesn't seem like he's losing anything. He looks like he's only getting better. Yeah, he's older and stuff, but he's a lot smarter than he used to be. He's not slower. He's not less powerful. His cardio's still amazing. He didn't look tired at all in that fight. And his wrestling has grown leaps and bounds. Even able to out-wrestle a guy like Hernandez, which was absolutely insane. So who these guys should be fighting next? Donald Cerrone's fighting Conor McGregor. I mean, let's be honest here. Conor called him out after. He said, let's fight. Let's do it. Cerrone versus Conor. This fight has been brewing for a long time. I mean, they had that trash-talking moment at the press conference. They've been wanting to fight each other for a long time. There was that part where Conor was supposed to fight RDA. RDA pulled out, and Cerrone was ready. Right? He just came out of I don't know if he came out of a fight camp or he came off a very short fight. And he was one of the front runners to fight Conor on short notice. It didn't happen. So this fight has to happen now. Personally, I do like it for Conor stylistically. Good boxer with good takedown defense, and Cerrone doesn't move his head a whole lot, even against Hernandez. There were a few times where Hernandez got really close to those overhands, and Cerrone wasn't moving his head at all. But that's the fight to make, I think. As for Alexander Hernandez, he was a number 11 fighter, so the most logical one, I think, would be Trinaldo, because I think that they get scheduled to fight, and Trinaldo pulled out, so that would be another fight that would make sense. And then we go to Joanne Calderwood beating Ariane Lipsky by decision 30-26s and then a 30-27. She put on a very good performance out there. Early on, she had trouble with the striking of Lipsky. Lipsky seemed to be a lot more explosive and have a lot more snap in her strikes, but Calderwood's grappling has improved tenfold. There was a point where she was only known as a striker, a Muay Thai fighter, and now her grappling seems to be even more dangerous. Her arm bars are quick, her positioning was really good. Even on the feet, she was laying that right straight like Cerrone was, because Lipsky doesn't move her head at all. But she's very dangerous to stay in close, stay in her range. You got to get in and then out on her, and that's exactly what Calderwood was doing. Her range control was just the deciding factor on the feet. But yeah, overall, just good performance for Calderwood. Just showed her skills all around to be better than someone like Lipsky. Even she admitted afterward she felt bad for Lipsky to be fighting someone like her on her first fight. And for Calderwood, to be honest, I think she should get a title shot. If you look at all the 125ers, I know people will say, but she will get smoked by Valentina Shevchenko. But that doesn't matter, right? I think she earned the title shot over everybody else. Her and Jessica I believe, have the most wins right now, with 3. But Calderwood has 2 finishes and 1 decision, whereas I has all decisions. And 2 of those were split decisions, very, very close fights. All of Calderwood's fights have been very decisive. So I think the next for the title shot should be Joanne Calderwood. And as for Lipsky, anybody at this point, really. The division's new. She just made her debut. Anybody at this point. Then we go to Alonzo Menefield, knocking out Moreira in the first round, 3 minutes and 56 seconds. There was so much of a pattern in this fight. Alonzo throwing the jab overhand, missing a lot of them, getting blocked for the most part. Moreira had no footwork, just standing up straight, and just moving back a little bit from the jab and blocking the right overhand. And then he started to resort to trying to take down Menefield. I think he should have done it a little bit more. It looked like Moreira had control of the fight for the most part, until he threw the back kick as Menefield was going for the same punch again. Went for the jab, and I think he went for the overhand, and Moreira went for a back kick, which missed, and stayed in distance. The form wasn't great. The speed wasn't there. Too many breaks in his form to land it meaningfully and quickly, and he got caught because of it. So, great win for Menefield. The light heavyweight division is pretty shallow, so maybe another win or 2 and he's going to be in the top 15. And a fun fight would be him and Cutelaba. That would be an absolute insane war. And as for Moreira, at this point, anybody, maybe someone like Jeremy Kimball. Then Corey Sandhagen versus Mario Batista. Sandhagen wins by submission in the first round, 3 minutes to 31 seconds. There's a lot of finishes on this card. Sandhagen looked amazing. He's a big guy for 135. His distance control is there. He looks so confident out there. Throwing the left hook, right leg kick over and over again. And Batista, he started ducking and throwing an overhand right as Sandhagen was moving in on him, and then Sandhagen had to see that a couple times, and he went for the flying knee as Batista ducked right into it and dropped him because of it. Had some good scrambles there. He had an inverted triangle whenever he got in a bad position against Batista, and then he also went for a Kimura to reverse the position, and then reverted that to an armbar, and he got the tap. So great win for Sandhagen, and he's definitely a prospect in the 135-pound division. I believe him and Sean O'Malley are probably going to be the future of this division. I believe them two are going to be at the top of the rankings. Maybe one of them is going to be the champion, and they're going to face each other one day. And watching the progression until that happens is going to be really fun. So who these guys should be fighting next? Batista again. There's been a lot of debuting fighters on this card. Anybody at this point for him that's outside top 15, maybe a new fighter as well making their debut. As for Sandhagen, this guy just finished his last 3 fights in the UFC. Let's go top 15 now. Let's go top 15. Peter Yan was able to get in top 15. Let's try to get Sandhagen in there as well. So Hani Yahya would make a lot of sense. The winner of Marlon Vera versus Thomas Almeida, that makes a lot of sense as well. Or Alejandro Perez. Alejandro Perez would actually be a very fun fight. If I had my way, I would absolutely do that fight. The winner of Marlon Vera versus Thomas Almeida will also be a very exciting and skillful fight. So either of those two make a lot of sense. And to be honest, I missed the rest of the fights. I missed the whole, I guess it's not Fight Pass anymore. Early prelims. But I heard Dennis Bermudez did win and he retired. Good way to retire, man. Going off a win. I mean, he had a bad loss streak there. And he was contemplating retiring. Getting a win over a young, powerful fighter is a great way to get out. Also in New York. I believe he is from New York. So gotta be happy for Dennis Bermudez. He's been doing this for a long, long time. He beat some great fighters in the sport. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. And one last thing, this was the first card on ESPN Plus. Leave a comment below. What do you guys think of the card, and what do you guys think about the whole ESPN experience, I guess you would say. I think the streaming service, I think ESPN Plus needs a little bit of work. Connection cut out on a lot of people, it seemed like. I asked on Twitter, and it happened all at once, I think, but it never came back for me, so I had to use the app on my phone. And if you didn't use ESPN or ESPN Plus, hopefully it worked out for you guys. It seemed like, especially in Canada, some of you guys over there telling me that it was pretty good over there. No issues at all. So hopefully ESPN can get things straight on that. Some of their new music is pretty cool. Not the old Fox music they used to always play. That reminds me of football. And the coverage was nice. And they had Trevor Whitman out there talking about technique and analyzing quickly right after seeing sequences and seeing each round. I like that as well. They should keep him around. If not, keep him around. Rotate like different kind of coaches, right? So maybe one day they have Faraz Sahabi if they go to Canada. They'll have Trevor Whitman if they go in Colorado or wherever he's from. They get in, just different kind of people. And then we can get different kind of views and see how these different coaches with different mindset see fights while they're happening. That would be absolutely awesome, actually. My next video is going to be a breakdown, so be on the lookout for that. And then it's going to be my podcast. And then my Nightmare matchup is going to come up later in the week. So be on the lookout for all that. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I'll see you guys in the next video.